Hey everyone, and welcome to this two-part webinar where we're going to be doing an expedition into AWS services. If you're anything like me, you'll know that the technology in AWS is moving so quickly that you can't possibly keep track, and you just basically lay awake at night thinking, Lord God, how am I going to keep up to date with all of these services? If you're thinking like that and you're feeling like that, good news, this webinar is for you. We'll be joined by our expert AWS in-house ninja, and he's Kalk, and he has distilled the top 20 services from AWS so that you don't have to. Over the two-part expedition, we'll be going back and forth, discussing these technologies and unwrapping them so that you don't have to. In this webinar, you'll be gaining real-life insights as to how to use these applications and what their real-life application could be for you. So, Ami, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for GlobalDots, and this webinar.
Hi, Nesh. Nice to be here today. So as you said, my name is Kalk. I'm working as a Director of Cloud and DevOps Professional Services in GlobalDots, mainly working and exploring DevOps and cloud applications and services, and provide them and interest with those applications our customers. So let's start the presentation.
The first topic is in compute. Ami, what can you tell us that's going on in the world of compute?
Okay, so let's start with the M6IN and M6IDN instances. As we can see, they are powered by a third generation Intel Xeon processor. They deliver up to 15% price performance compute to M5, their previous family brothers pricing. They support up to 128 vCPUs per instance, and their network bandwidth offer up to 200 gigabytes per second.
So these sound like super powerful machines, and if it's a price advantageous to move from an M5 to an M6, is there any reason why somebody isn't doing that? It seems like a no-brainer from my side.
If you need more performance and you need more memory, and definitely if you need more network bandwidth, it is the server that you would like to use. You definitely need to move to that one. And as you said, the pricing is also much better. So it is a no-brainer to move to this one. I see no reason why you shouldn't you do that.
And not to say anything mean about Microsoft here, but it does seem like all the use cases, or a lot of them, are around Microsoft. So it seems that Microsoft have definitely got some pretty memory hungry and bandwidth hungry applications. Just a comment, not a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's also important to say that till today, you could use C5N, M5N, and R5N instances to get highest network bandwidth on EC2 instances, and now they are providing more servers which supports this high EBS bandwidth. And I will continue later, and we'll see that there is an entire family that is being added with such a big performance and such a high performance to AWS.
Great. What's next?
Let's move to the next servers. Okay, Nesh. So the next server, the next instances that I would like to present are the C6 IN, R6IN, and R6IDN. As we see, these instances are designed to be able to handle up to twice as many packets per second as their predecessors. We're talking about Ice Lake processor, the instances that are powered by Ice Lake processors, which are the third generation Intel Xeon processor that run on 3.5 gigahertz and offer up to almost 1.5 average performance gain over the prior generation.
Great. So it seems like basically it's an obvious kick up again for these people. I'm assuming people, if you're using an R5 IN instance, you don't need to be told what an R6IN instance is for. But what are some of the use cases here?
So again, if we need very high power compute instances, those are the ones that we should choose. As we see, they are powered also by Elastic Network Adapter and Elastic Fabric Adapter, which is available on the highest or the biggest machine, which is the 32 extra large. In order to make use of these adapters, you will need to make sure that your AMI includes the latest NVMe and ENA drivers.
Nice. Top tips. Sounds good. What's next on the list?
Let's move to the hype of this year, which is machine learning and high performance computing. We are talking about new instances, a new family of the HPC 7G instances that, again, designed to give you the best price performance for tightly coupled, compute-intensive HPC and distributed compute workloads.
So the use case here is for machine learning and artificial intelligence. Would be right in thinking that? And what difference does it make to the previous instances that have been around, apart from bigger numbers?
So again, these machines are powered by the Graviton 3E processors generation with up to 35 higher vector instruction processing performance as opposed to the Graviton 3.
So if you're into the world of higher vector instruction processing, this is for you, basically.
Absolutely. And as you can see, if we are trying to recap what we saw till now, all the new machines are better price performance than their previous family's predecessors.
Yeah, and I think that's very common with AWS. And in case people didn't realize, that's because AWS want you off of their old hardware. So they incentivize you to keep moving and switching to new hardware so that they can retire the old stuff. So you're always better off on a new instance than an old one for cost reasons.
Yeah, exactly. And the last one of HPC is the R7IZ. Now we see that this one is powered by Intel as opposed to the previous one, which was powered by Graviton. It is the first generation of Intel, which is the Sapphire Rapids. And we see that they are run on a turbo frequency of 3.9 gigahertz, which probably is the highest that you can get today. They have high performance of the memory as well, and they're using the DDR5 memory.
Is it the case that if you've built an application that's specifically built for Xeon processors that you can't switch to use Graviton? Do you have to recode if you're on Xeon and you want to use Graviton? What's the story there?
In case the application was specifically built for Xeon, we might do some specific things and to adjust it to Graviton. But in most cases, it was built on Xeon as a default processor. And in that case, we will need to rebuild the latest and greatest version on ARM. So means that in case we are starting a Graviton or ARM environment, we will also provide building servers on Graviton. And we will build the latest and rebuild the latest and greatest version, and we'll run it on Graviton. And in most cases, that should be enough. Let's proceed. So we talked about high performance compute. We need to talk also about the new machine learning instances, which are the INF2 and TRN2. And I remind you, INF stands for inference instances and TRN for training instances. Again, due to the increased use of the training and the inference servers, AWS is adding more and more families and new instances for that purpose. As we can see, the inference 2 instances offer 3 times higher compute performance and up to 4 times higher throughput, and up to 10 times lower latency compared to their predecessors. You can see the number up to 2.3 petaflops of performance. It is amazing.
So quite interesting for people in the ML world. It sounds like you have to be pretty advanced in order to be using these instances already. So if are these applicable for people that are just starting their machine learning journey, and how does that interface with sort of off-the-shelf machine learning that Amazon's offered up until now? So I'm thinking of things like AWS Recognition, where it's kind of a machine learning as a service. I'm assuming this isn't that, but what kind of machine learning are we talking about here, and how advanced is that?
It's interesting that AWS have announced about that machine in late November, and I remind you that I would call it the revolution of OpenAI and ChatGPT started about mid-December. So it's like AWS was prepared for this revolution, for this crazy change. And there are, as you know, many companies, many AI companies that just started, many startups that just started afterwards, and already suggest some applications that are using ChatGPT and more. And these machines are especially for them. They can train their algorithms, they can train it over and over again with much better performance, and then they can put it into the inference and let the end user work with it with a better performance. And also you can see that even they perform better, you will call it green-wise. It is 50% better performance per watt.
You can also have open source machine learning AI toolkits where you can run, I would call it on-premise AI. I'm assuming that these instances are suitable for that as well?
Yes, sure.
Very cool. Very convenient that they came just in time for the AI revolution. No conspiracy there.
Yeah, you're right. Let's move on. We're now moving on to EBS. We now can encrypt both the data and the boot volumes of EC2 instances. We use the security standard of AES 256 and the data key generated by AWS KMS. So it's part of the ecosystem of AWS.
Awesome. So that's, I'm sure lots of CISOs will be sleeping a lot more happy knowing that they can do boot volumes and data volumes and at rest and in transit. The data key generated by AWS KMS, I guess that you can bring your own key if you don't want to use AWS KMS. Is that the case?
Actually, yes. As we know, EBS works by default with KMS, and according to the regular procedure, if you are bringing your own key, or what is called CMK, customer managed key, you will need to add additional permissions to use it.
Very nice. So probably about time, I would think, in the security world that this was available. But hey, at least they got there in the end.
Yes, as you said, very important that the data is encrypted both on the machine and both on transition. It's very important. And even on the snapshots, by the way.
Not very exciting, but still a necessary part of the tech world. What do we have next?
Let's move on to news on storage. So there is a very exciting, and I would say also, again, very promising failover control for Amazon S3 multi-region access points. You can set up an S3 failover to any region that you want, and we can see it also in this screen. The idea here, the interesting thing here is that now you can control which region you want to move it to, as opposed to the previous stage where AWS controlled it. The current multi-region access point model treats all the regions as active and send traffic to any of them. And today's model lets you see if you want an active or passive, because that obviously will save you a lot of money on the transition of the data.
So essentially, the cheapest way to do data is single region. But what we're now saying is that rather than having multi-region where you're automatically in all regions, you actually choose which regions you're duplicating your data in. Is that right?
Exactly.
Wow, that's a nice feature. And the way you fail over, I guess you choose the order of the countries that you want to point to one after another.
Exactly.
Nice, very nice feature.
For global companies that has more than one data center or more than one region, handle more than one region, it's definitely a good idea for a solution.
Awesome.
Let's move to your favorite subject, security. So to my opinion, the biggest announcement of the year is AWS Security Lake. Build service that automatically centralizes and organizes security data from cloud and on-premise sources into a purpose-built data lake stored in your account. What does it mean? It means that nowadays we have several, if not tens of security systems in our organization. We might have several security alerts which actually are coming or originated by the same server or by the same issue, but we're getting it from the several security systems and several alerts. By using a centralized security lake, we can now have one point to get all the alerts into, and then we can correlate which alert is coming or which alert is being propagated from one point, and we see it in several systems, in several security systems.
So this seems to be like a game-changing piece of technology for anybody in cloud workload protection or who has a security hat on. Is it the case that you'll expect this to be a replacement for a SIEM? Because obviously people will have SIEMs in place already using a number of tools and collecting a lot of data. I don't know that there'll be any if it's only just been announced, I can't imagine that there's any third-party services that would be off the shelf ready to take for this. So is this going to become a new kind of SIEM? What's the future for this?
Great question. Let me please answer it by clicking and let you know which companies are already parties of that service. As you can see, there is the AWS on the left-hand side, the AWS service list that are already connected to the security lake and supported by it. And there is a certain number of, it's about 10 or 15 companies that are already on the list. That was in the beginning of the year. Today, it's more than 30 companies that are already service provider and more companies which supports it on, as you said, on the SIEM level, on the monitoring level, or on any reporting level. If you're using SIEM, to your exact question, if you're using SIEM, I think it is an add-on, important add-on service, which, as we saw in the previous slide, also you can query using SQL. So you can customize it according to your needs. And I think it's gonna be one of the most important services that's gonna be in use in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I would agree. Also completely new to me because I didn't know about it at all, even though it seems like it's been around for a little while. But is it the case also that these companies, the third parties, not only just pulling data out of it, but they can put data into it? So obviously I understand that you could get...
Actually, the third-party companies are pushing data into it from their system. As we can see, we see CrowdStrike and CyberArk and Orca and Palo Alto and all of the Wiz. These are companies that are getting alerts and sending alerts to the security lake. And we can see that. I can tell you, by the way, that I met early this year one company, and I said, "Did you hear about this service of AWS?" And they told me no, and I just showed them the service, and they was crazy. They didn't know about it before, and then today they are part of the third-party companies that are on the list.
Oh, wow. There you go. That's why you need to talk to Ami, you see. Ami's in the know.
Guess what's here?
How convenient. That's it for the first part of this two-part webinar. Before we embark on further revelations and AWS innovations, why not gain an edge? Book yourself in for a chat with Ami and don't be one of those people that gets left behind on the announcements.